This film, it feels particularly significant right now. It's positioned as like one of the last stories we'll see before Avengers Doomsday, which, as you know, is all building towards that massive Secret Wars event. So yeah, what happens in Thunderbolts, it could have some real ripple effects down the line. What's really interesting, though, based on these initial reactions, is that Thunderbolts doesn't seem bogged down, like in setting up a whole slate of future movies. People are saying the post-credit scenes will likely tie into Avengers Doomsday, sure, but the film itself, it appears to be telling its own contained story. And that feels, well, pretty refreshing, actually. There's also this fascinating element of mirroring to callbacks, which suggests a kind of self-awareness within the narrative itself. Pretty interesting. Now, while the MCU is no stranger to humor, obviously, Thunderbolt seems to be aiming for a different flavor. It's reportedly leaning into a darker tone, not the constant comedic barrage you might find in, say, Deadpool. It sounds like they're taking a more maybe nuanced approach to the superhero genre. So, okay, well, there are certainly large-scale threats involved. We're hearing about something called the Century Void and the machinations of Val. The core of this movie, it appears to be surprisingly character-driven. It's less about simply, saving the world from a big cataclysm and more about the internal struggles of these individuals. It's focused on their personal journeys, yeah.
Yeah.
And the unexpected connections they forge within this really unconventional team, which kind of flips the typical superhero script, doesn't it? This focus on their inner lives. It's even led some people to playfully dub them the mental health Avengers. It makes you think, right? Like, what if the original Avengers had approached Thanos? Not with brute force, but with, I don't know, empathy, maybe a good therapist. It's a humorous thought, sure, but it really underscores this movie's apparent exploration of themes. Things like grief, trauma, abandonment, the search for purpose. We're even hearing about a moment early on where a character seemingly undergoes like a physical transformation as a way to avoid confronting their issues directly. Which sounds, very dark. Almost a satirical take on avoidance, One of the big questions going in was how this team, it's comprised of individuals who aren't necessarily the most powerful in the MCU. How could they possibly stand against threats like Sentry or the Void? Characters rumored to possess power on a scale maybe even exceeding the original Avengers. It seems the movie is tackling this by subverting those traditional power dynamics. Perhaps their strength lies not in, raw power, but in something else entirely. We'll have to see. So putting it all together, the early impressions suggest a movie with echoes of Suicide Squad. A group of disparate, arguably morally gray characters forced into a team dynamic. There's a significant emphasis, it seems, on the emotional baggage and past traumas these characters carry, with Florence Pugh's character reportedly playing a central role in this aspect of the story. And David Harbour's portrayal of Red Guardian, that's getting considerable praise for his comedic contributions, which apparently fit well within the overall tone, not jarringly. We are still seeing some familiar points of discussion around MCU releases, though, mentions of occasional humor that might feel a little out of place to some, and maybe some potential inconsistencies in tone here and there. However, it seems there are also elements that are really resonating with people, like the action sequences, for instance, although there's a note that the CGI might have some maybe uneven moments. But despite that, there's this underlying darker, almost espionage thriller vibe being reported, which sounds pretty promising, I think. Interestingly, reactions to the villain are mixed, and at least one person described the ending as somewhat anticlimactic, even while still finding the movie generally enjoyable as a kind of Marvel Suicide Squad type of film. It's also worth noting, the movie appears to take some significant departures from the Thunderbolts as they exist in the comic books. Now, this might be something that resonates more with longtime comic readers, right? Compared to those who are encountering these characters for the first time on screen, it's always a balancing act. Looking ahead, there's definitely a lot of anticipation surrounding how these characters and the events we see in Thunderbolts, how they'll ultimately tie into Avengers Doomsday. The post-credit scene is apparently quite important for setting the stage for what's to come in the larger narrative. So stick around for that. Ultimately, it seems Thunderbolts is a film that's generating a lot of buzz, a lot of diverse opinions, and really the best way to figure out how you feel about it will be to see it for yourself when it comes out. Marvel releases, they always seem to ignite passionate discussions, don't they? And this one appears to be no exception. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel.